This is Jennifer Clark Tinker. The message you're about to hear is a sermon that I gave on Sunday, May 11th, 2014, and it is based on John chapter 10, verses 1 through 10. I encourage you to look that up when you get the chance. It's for a Sunday commonly known as Good Shepherd Sunday because it draws from a passage that deals with Jesus being the Good Shepherd. The summer after I finished high school, my mom and I went on a trip, and it was just my mom and me because my parents were divorced when I was 14, so my dad wasn't in the picture in this trip, and my brother was working all summer, so it was just my mom and I on this trip, and we were going to go. This was my graduation present from my mom. She threw me a party too, but this was my big graduation present. She was going to take me on this trip, and I lived in Ohio. I grew up in Ohio, so we were going to go up through Canada, and we were going to go, our plan was to go through Maine, but we were tent camping along the way. And so each morning, you have to pitch, each day you get there, you have to pitch your tent, and then in the morning you have to tear it down and pack it up and pack everything up, and then you have to take all your gear and all that to the next place. And so we got up into Canada, and it started kind of getting old for me. I just didn't want to do one more thing. And I said, Mom, I like Canada. Can we just skip Maine and stay in Canada? And so we found a campground we liked, and we stayed in the one place in Canada for quite some time. So it was nice to get to be settled. So we had we got our Canadian money, and we settled in there. Well, then on our way back into the United States, or maybe it was across the border, I'm not sure, but at one point there was a toll bridge that we didn't know was going to be a toll bridge, and this one said, the ones that say coin only, exact coin, you have to have only change. They didn't take any bills, they didn't take anything else, it was just change. Well, we had already exchanged our money when we had come back into the United States, and so we didn't really have much money left. So we started throwing in American currencies. My mom kind of rummaged around in her purse and found what she could of change that she had, and she threw some in, and it wasn't enough. And I found some money, and I threw it in, and it still wasn't enough. Well, then we saw a sign that said you could use U.S. or Canadian coins. It couldn't be bills, but it could be coins of either kind. And so she's like, well, I have some Canadian coins left. And so she threw those in, and it still wasn't enough. I said, I have some Canadian coins, and I threw those in, and it still wasn't enough. And so finally, I don't know where we looked or what eventually did it. We even found some pennies and threw those in, and the sign said no pennies. But we just, I don't know, we thought for good measure, just throw in whatever we can do, and they didn't take those any. So we're just watching this thing go up, trying to make sure we have enough money to get through there. Eventually we found enough change from somewhere, I don't know where, but eventually one last throw, and the gate went up, and we were able to go through. But I'm telling you, we were not going to get through that gate until we were paid up. Well, in the gospel reading for today, Jesus is using the analogy of a sheepfold and compares himself with the gate to the sheepfold. The sheep in the analogy are Jesus' followers. The passage will go on for Jesus to explain how he is the good shepherd to the sheep. And we read verses 1 through 10 this morning, and verse 11 is the one where Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. So you can read that whole chapter. In fact, this day in the church is often referred to as Good Shepherd Sunday, which we mentioned in our introduction this morning. And we read a portion of this chapter of the Gospel of John and reflect on the care that Jesus gives us. I have to tell you, in my preparation, I found it curious that in this section, Jesus talks about being the gate. I mean, I think it's a pretty good trick to be able to be both the shepherd and the gate, right? But mixing metaphors, it can happen, right? Literature is full of mixed metaphors. But what I discovered in my study was that at night, the shepherd himself would lie down in the entryway of the sheepfold. He himself would become the gate to keep the sheep in and to keep the predators out. So in the end, it wasn't such a mixed metaphor as I had thought for Jesus to present himself as both the gate and the shepherd. To be honest with you, though, the idea of regulating who or what is in or out kind of rubs me the wrong way. To begin with, there are gates like those toll booths and border crossings that aren't exactly pleasant experiences. I always wonder what would happen if I ever didn't have enough coins. Or what if I inadvertently made a statement that got me red flagged at a border crossing? To go a little bit further with this, there are other kinds of gates in life that seem to have as their only purpose to keep us from doing what we really want to do. Maybe there are rules for a class project that seem too constricting, don't allow us the creativity that we would like to use on the project. Maybe there are places that are off limits where we're simply not allowed to go for reasons that we don't understand. Or maybe they are unjust restrictions, that glass ceiling that keeps us out of a career we might enjoy. Many times we approach the Christian life itself as if staying in bounds, following all the rules, is the sum of our existence as believers. Of course, we'll argue amongst ourselves about exactly which rules are the most important to follow. Is it don't drink and don't smoke, like some Christians believe? Or is it simply don't drink to drunkenness, or don't drink and drive? Should we give 1/10 of our income as a tithe to the church? Or should we sell everything and follow Jesus? Do we use bread or wafers when we have communion? See, there are all these kind of things that we want to make rules about. Then, once we're convinced that we know what the rules ought to be, we can be pretty unpleasant with one another about trying to keep each other in line about how it's supposed to be. In fact, we ourselves can become a threat to our neighbors when we focus too narrowly on the do's and don'ts of what it means to live a godly life. When we put rules ahead of relationships with God and others, we become especially dangerous. We harm others when we employ destructive or dehumanizing strategies to enforce our version of the rules, and when we use violence to punish those we consider infidels. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that there should be no rules in this life, but oftentimes our way of getting compliance is not God's way. God's way is revealed to us in Jesus, who laid down his life for us through his death on the cross. Jesus lies in the gate for us to protect us in love. He gets to know us as followers and lets us learn his voice so that we may follow him joyfully because we want to follow his voice. Not because we have to follow the rules, but because we want to follow our shepherd. He has come not to do us harm or to keep us penned up. No, he leads us to green pastures. He has come that we might have life and have it abundantly. So while toll booths and other gates in life may not be the most fun, we have in Jesus a gate that is for us, a Savior who loves us, and indeed a very good shepherd.